Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, mentor, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Hey, Jim, I'm doing good. It's just good to be with you. We're actually recording, toward the tail end of the week, and we don't normally do that, so it's just nice to kind of end my week with a friendly face.
Right on. Same here. Yeah, we have Vacation Bible School this week. So it's the end of the week. It's the end of the day. And It's about the end of me. So but doesn't that segue well into what we're about to talk about?
I think so.
At podcast 143. What are we talking about today?
Jim, the title is called Busy or Productive. Mm-hmm. And this pod came out of a kind of an obscure scripture that I read a while back from Chronicles, of all places, 2 Chronicles chapter 23. And the setting is King Jehoiada is giving instructions to his army and the priests about the temple and say, here's who's allowed in, here's who's not allowed in. And in verse 6 of that chapter, there's this phrase that ends the verse, and it says this: all the other men are to guard what the Lord has assigned to them.
Yeah.
And that kind of jumped out at me. And I thought, am I doing that? Am I guarding what God has assigned to me? Or am I doing a whole bunch of other stuff he's not assigned to me? Have you ever asked yourself that question or wonder about that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think you introduced me to a phrase years ago called, when you say yes, you begin the war of 1,000 no's.
No, I think that was you, actually.
Is that me?
Told me that, yes.
Okay. But just that phrase, the war of 1,000 no's, that to be fully committed to really carefully guard your yes, so that you can keep your word, you can do a great job, you don't throw your life out of balance, you can be productive for your master. That's important. And to know your assignment and to guard it. That's the first thing I thought of when you read that scripture, was that's part of guarding that,
It is. And I think as leaders, it's not a surprise, that we spend time solving problems. We have a long to-do list. Sometimes the things on our to-do list actually move the ball down the field, and other times they don't. And I've noticed, Jim, that there are moments in the last however many years, I've been a leader, that knocking things off my list is kind of adrenaline producing, or it's intoxicating. But a lot of times there in the past, and I'm getting so much better at this now, thank the Lord, there were things on my to-do list that just had nothing to do with my assignment. My God-given assignment. They weren't bad things. But I was busy with stuff, and I don't know where I turned the corner on this, but I realized that busy isn't always productive.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'd like to talk about, because I think sometimes we get fooled by busy.
Yeah.
Like, man, I had such a big day. I got so much done. And then I look at, how much of that actually made a dent in our 2025 year-end vision. And I say, I have to chalk it up to, well, not a good day. I was busy. I was busy doing the wrong things.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk about that, if that's all right with you. How do we do this? How do we guard our assignment? How do we avoid being faked out by busy?
Right.
And so here's three things that I think are included in guarding our assignment. Here's the first one, Jim, and that's devoting the best part of our day, time, and energy to that assignment.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Jim, and I'll let you tell us when your best time of day is. But for me, after my time with the Lord in the morning, then about from 6 to noon, those are the golden hours. That's where I do my most demanding tasks. Especially the ones that are destination vision specific.
Yes.
And so my most productive work hours are from about 6 until noon.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Okay.
As early as I'm rested and ready to get up, so somewhere between 4:30 and 6:30 until after lunch. I have to downshift, but there's less of me. It's like you're going along in fifth gear, and all of a sudden you get into the mountains after lunch, and you got to downshift to fourth or even third gear. You have to really, your engine's working as hard, but you're not going nearly as fast. And if you assign, I'm going to study in the evening or study in the afternoon. It takes a lot more out of me to produce something that nearly as good as when my head is clear, my heart is clear, my energy's up. That second shot of espresso, has kicked in, and I think I'm wonderful. After that second shot, I think I'm amazing and intelligent and humble,
So I think part of guarding your assignment is knowing, what the best part of your day is in terms of work.
Absolutely.
Are you more of a morning person? Are you more of an afternoon type person? And putting the not only the most demanding tasks in that time slot, but you're dreaming, you're thinking, you're strategizing, you're writing. If you're a leader, you're writing at some level. In the business world, in the church world, for sure. If you're and so writing for me, we've done a lot of writing. You and I have written together. I've written some on my own. You've written some on your own. It is a demanding task. So figure out when that is. So if you want to guard your assignment, figure out when you have the most energy and do the most important work in those hours.
Beautiful. Yeah. And what I like about that, John, is it's so actionable. It's so simple. And if you didn't know that, or you didn't have language for that, your heart just started nodding its head saying, yeah, I knew that. I'm glad you told me that, because I didn't realize that. And I was taking the kids to school and going to the gym and then doing this and running the errands. And by the time I get to the office, I'm exhausted.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that little simple switch, I think, will really help. If you haven't figured that out, figure it out and be religious about that. The second idea around guarding our assignment, Jim, and I'm a little hesitant to talk about it because we can only talk about it at a high level, and because there's just not enough time. But I would say this is the second thing, is to develop an approach to work that actually tracks with your mission and vision. Now, it's kind of a little of a play off the other one, but I'm going to get specific here. For the last 9.5 years, I've used 2 tools to help me focus my work. I have a whiteboard in my office, and I have a weekly to-do list that I build off of that whiteboard and off of my appointments in my calendar. So real quick, if you're watching or listening, I want you to envision a whiteboard in your office that you divide into 4 equal quadrants. And so you got 4 quadrants. Top right quadrant is your dream quadrant. This is where our 2025 vision for Converge Coaching lives. We're going to influence 25,000 leaders by the end of 2025. This is where our long-term goals, our big picture items live in the dream quadrant. And I would just say this: if you're not dreaming as a leader, you're missing out on an important component of leadership.
Yes.
Part of your job as a leader is not just to be a good preacher, a good teacher, a good tactician, a great with money. Your job as a leader, part of your job, is to look into the future and describe the future in present tense language to those you're leading.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the vision part of it, right? Without a vision, the people perish. They cast off restraint. They go their own way. The difference between running on a road in a direction and running on a treadmill is vision. I'm going somewhere with the same amount of effort. I'm actually progressing versus I'm just running in circles, as it were. Yeah, so absolutely.
I have that on the right hand upper quadrant, left hand upper quadrant. Again, try to visualize this. I have the 4 core values written out for our company. And we've talked about core values so much on the podcast. They're nothing more than the behavioral guardrails of your company, of your ministry. These are the behavioral hills you're going to die on. They're the rumble strips that if you bump into, you course correct. And so I have that in the upper left corner, and I'm looking over to my whiteboard right now as we're recording, because I want to remember, Jim, every day how I'm supposed to behave. Right. On my way to that dream quadrant, to that big picture assignment God has given to me. Real quick, the 2 lower quadrants, lower left is my current quarter projects or goals. And I only have like 5 or 6 in the quadrant. If you have 50 or 60 in that quadrant, you're biting off way too much. And
Yeah.
these goals track to my dream quadrant.
Mhm.
So they contribute to the movement of our company, our team toward the 2025 year end vision. And then the bottom right is next quarter. Here's some of the projects I got to start working on and maybe even complete in the next
Right.
quarter. So Jim, that whiteboard at a minimum gives me a 3-month view into the future. At a
Right.
maximum for us, it's about another 2.5 years. And so
Yeah.
it gives me this big picture, destination, behavioral guideline,
Yeah.
and it puts structure around my work.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or is that too technical?
Well, no, I think everybody needs to, I think for someone to say, I'm going to do the same thing John does. It may work for them, it may not. So I would just say, find what does work for you. If it's a timeline of where I am and
There you go.
dashes and numbers with lists underneath it, if it's the 4 quadrants, if it's, but what you wouldn't want was just today's urgent tasks,
right?
And then tomorrow's urgent task, and then the next day's urgent task. And you realize, it's the tyranny of the urgent. I'm basically putting out forest fires, but I haven't planted any new trees. I haven't, tilled any ground. I haven't developed waterway. And in doing that, I think you can be artificially encouraged by having been busy, and you can be artificially discouraged by saying, I'm so busy, but I'm not accomplishing anything that's important to me. And they're both artificial, that it can be easily corrected with some direction. And I think this is an important question, John. How many hours a day do you put into writing on that dry erase board? How many hours per day?
Not much.
Right?
No, I mean, the first time I did the dry erase board, the four quadrants, it took me hours. I mean, it took me,
that's important.
Weeks of fine tuning it. But here's the beauty of it. 9.5 years of doing this, and the whiteboard takes me every week, might take me a half hour now.
Right.
To update, to work on, because it's just part of my rhythm. You made a great point. It doesn't have to be a whiteboard, but find a tool that allows you to look down the road.
Yes. Yeah.
And not just have your nose on, like you said, the daily task.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that what I'm doing daily is actually giving me motion towards something.
Right.
And that's where the second part of what I do to help approach work in a productive way. And it's, I build a weekly list off of my whiteboard and my appointments in my calendar. So on Saturday mornings, I sit down for a half hour. It only takes me 30 minutes tops, and I plan my upcoming week.
Yeah.
Now, I've had leaders tell me,
I was going to say, I don't have time to do that. Is that what they're going to say?
No. Well, some have said that, but more have said this. I tried that and my week blew up, and so I quit. Look, if you have a job that is prone to interruption and disruption, which if you're a pastor, there's a lot of that. You need this more than anybody else in the world. Yeah. You need a game plan. And so I plan my week out. Monday, boom, boom, boom. Tuesday, boom, boom, boom. And then when I get to my office on Monday morning, I have a game plan for the week. I don't waste any time on Monday thinking about what should I work on today.
Right.
And I've been doing that for 9.5 years. I've never had a week where I crossed everything off my list.
Okay. And you're okay with that?
And I'm fine with that as long as I got the most important things crossed off that list. And so again, you can use any mechanism or tool you want to, but the beauty of this is that my day-to-day effort, that at least a good chunk of my day-to-day effort is contributing to a big picture destination. And Jim, there's a feeling of accomplishment that comes with that, a satisfaction knowing, man, we are actually making progress towards something that we feel is very important.
Yes. Yeah. And in that, we're talking about emotions now, not just productivity. There's a sense of, there's a feeling of progress. And I think we try to shortcut that by our to-do list for the day. And we get 90% of it, we pick up the laundry and we, mow the grass and we write our sermon and we, whatever it is. And but do we know if we're progressing towards the larger goals of our lives?
Yeah.
You don't know unless you're fully aware of what those larger goals are. And then mowing the grass, I don't know if that's a part of the larger goal, but it's something that needs to be done. And it fits on a different list than the larger goals of our lives. But we can spend our lives mowing the grass and never get around to really doing what we're created to do.
And I would just say this real quick, and we'll get on to the third one. And,
Yeah.
and that is this, that it has, you can't keep that in your head.
Right. Yeah.
It has to be written on something that is visible to you on a regular basis. That's in front of you that you see.
Yeah.
It can't go on your shelf. It can't go in a folder.
Yeah.
It has to be out. It has, you have to see it. I need to be reminded.
Yeah. Yes.
Where are we going? So that's the second one. And then here's the third way I think we guard our assignment. Jim, you actually alluded to this by saying it's a war of 1,000 no's. And here's the third one is to deal ruthlessly with distractions.
Yes. Yeah.
Notice I didn't say deal ruthlessly with people.
Right.
Even though they can be really distracting sometimes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Often are. Yeah.
I want to challenge our listeners and watchers to ask themselves this question today. Here it is. Am I only doing what only I can do?
Yeah.
Every year, I know the answer to that for me right now, Jim, is no. But I've been asking myself that question for 2 years.
Yeah.
Am I only doing what only I can do? And I can say this, that over the last 2 years, I'm closer to that goal than I was 2 years ago.
Right.
And it doesn't just help me personally, it helps our organization.
Yeah.
It forces delegation.
Yeah.
Right. It forces, and these are good things that it's forcing, shared leadership responsibility. And it allows the work to continue. But, if I get run over by a gravel hauler tomorrow, the work would still continue because I have focused over a period of time of giving responsibility to the team.
Yeah.
And obviously, if I ever did get run over by a gravel hauler, Jim, I'd like the team to pause for a day or two to mourn my passing, right?
For a day or two.
I'd like you to cry for a while.
Yeah. Good.
But then be able to pick up the ball and keep heading toward our 2025 goal. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think about this distraction piece? I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I am trying to emphasize this.
No, I think two things. I think one is if the only piece of carpeting in your organization that is worn out is the one that walks into your door, then something's way out of order. Something's way out of balance. I've heard people say I can't delegate because no one knows how to do it except me. And that is probably true, and they won't do it as well as you when you give it to them, and you're responsible to help them to do it well. We become the lid, right? To quote John Maxwell, the law of the lid. We become the lid in our organizations as the key leaders, more often than not, because we have to write the bulletin and approve the artwork and figure out the T-shirt and set up and make sure and really. The organization, two things happens. One is it doesn't grow. And the other one is people with gifts don't go to your church anymore. They're not a part of your team anymore because they had something to give and they could never find a place to give it. And when you gave them a chance to give it, they were corrected by you because they didn't do it the way you wanted them to do it. And it's easier just not to try than to try and fail. Most men especially would rather not try than try and fail. So I think what you're saying is so true. And yet I'm gonna throw it back a little bit and say, but it probably is one of the most significant challenges of a leader is delegation.
I agree.
Because your name's on it or your leadership's attached to it or what people think of, the youth ministry, if you give it to a youth pastor or the sales division, if you give them to somebody, the sales division, make them a manager over that, it is a hard thing to stay out of. And it is an easy thing to give way too much input or not enough input. So it is a complicated, this is where I come back and say, I think that all the blind spots that most leaders would have, you need someone to show you those. That won't just you won't see them. Your employees will see them. Your partners will see them. Your spouse will see them. Your children will see them, but you won't see them unless somebody helps you to see. The problem is not there's no good workers anymore. The problem is you're not a good leader, and you don't know it.
Yeah.
But if you listen to your people, so that's why I think Converge or something like that would be very important here. Would you agree with that?
I agree. And we, Converge Coaching had that done. We had that done for us a little over a year ago. Boy, was that eye-opening.
Yeah.
That was so eye-opening. We had an objective third party come in, interview the team.
Yeah.
And I told them, you can ask the team anything you want.
Please. Or just the results mean nothing.
Right. And man, did we learn a ton. And Jim, one of the things that I learned was that I have a hard time letting go.
Yeah. Everybody does though, John. I don't think that's you. I think that's, and it isn't because you're a control freak. It's because you're a care freak. I really care about the quality of this. I really care about the people that, they called you, you answered the phone, you did your best. Now you give somebody else the phone number. They're supposed to call somebody else. Like it is very difficult to give that up.
It is, but here's the beautiful thing that we've experienced, right?
Yeah.
As I let go more and trust my team more, my team is performing beautifully. Right. They're getting great reviews from our clients. My life is actually better.
Yeah.
I'm not as fatigued. And if you're listening or watching today and you're fatigued, maybe what we're talking about today has something to do with it. That you're not focused more on your assignment than you are on all the other peripherals that shout for your attention. So I want to encourage our leaders today. We really want to encourage you. What is your God-given assignment? And if you don't know what that is, that's okay, but figure it out. Figure that out, and then build your work life around it.
Yeah.
That's not to say you're going to spend 100% of your time working on your assignment. I think that happens in heaven. I think we're going to do that in heaven, right? We're going to work 100% of the time on the things that, man, we're in our wheelhouse all the time.
Yeah.
But try to increase the amount of time that you're spending that's assignment focused.
Yeah.
And learn how to trust people around you, develop people around you to take the peripherals, which I believe they may end up being better than you anyway. In the long run. So I want to wrap it up, Jim, and then I'll let you close it. Here's the reflective question I want to ask everybody listening or watching. Are you giving your God-given purpose the time, energy, and focus it deserves? What are those good works that God has specifically prepared in advance for you to do? Yeah. And I want to challenge you, and I'm challenging you, Jim, and I'm challenging myself. Guard what the Lord has assigned to you.
Marilyn, thanks, John. As you talk about the 25,000 leaders by 2025, I'm one of those. You were a stranger to me years ago. You knocked on the door, or you made a phone call or text message. Hey, going through town, can I drop off a book and buy you a cup of coffee or whatever? And we hung out. And I'm glad that on your board there was a number big enough to include myself, my staff, my family that you've coached. And I think that if you hadn't had that upper right hand corner of 25,000 leaders, if that wasn't in focus, then whenever your monetary needs were met, or whenever your ego needs were met, or whenever your whatever was met, then you settle there. If there isn't a goal, a God-given goal that's larger than actually a very intimidating goal, right? I mean, it's coming into focus. Intimidated by it. Yeah, it's coming into focus, but it's still about another. I mean, there's a lot of miracles, right, that need to happen between here and 2025 that we're believing for. But it's that God-given purpose, that broken heart for, that leadership to, that service of, and once you can define that and put it in front of you every day, then you can't settle. You haven't won. You're still fighting. You haven't lost. You're still fighting. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that whiteboard. I think, matter of fact, at your funeral, we're going to put it on top of your casket. All right. And we'll cry. We'll cry really hard. All right. Well, dear leaders, listeners, and watchers, thanks for being a part of this today. We do encourage you. Don't just be busy. Spurgeon said the busy minister is either lazy or vain. And I'm not quite sure I know what that means, but I do feel smarter when I quote Spurgeon. So we've accomplished maybe two things. I don't know. God bless you guys. Keep going after it. It's Tuesday morning. You haven't quit. And so you're a winner. Keep going. God bless you as you continue to lead from alignment.